Hello and welcome to another standard gameplay video here on the official MTG Arena channel. Today we're taking a look at an aggressive red-green deck that tries to get the most out of these various pump spells, like the classic Giant Growth. Don't see that one very often anymore. 1 mana, +3/+3 until end of turn, very simple. Then we've got the relatively recent Monstrous Rage as well, giving a +2/+0 until end of turn, as well as giving the target a monster roll token. So that's a +1/+1 and trample aura that will stay on that creature. And then we also have 4 copies of Audacity, another aura, giving +2/+0 and trample. And when it's put into the graveyard from the battlefield, we still get to draw a card at least. And then we also have 4 copies of Ancestral Anger, which can pump up a creature for 1 turn, as well as drawing a card, so it will still replace itself. And then there's also 1 Mirren Bane Splitter, which we can flash in at instant speed, giving a creature 2 extra power, and then we can still move it around afterwards. So these are the pump effects, and then we've got the creatures that can leverage these pump spells very well. 4 copies of Cacophony Scamp, a 1/1, and when it deals common damage to a player, we may sacrifice it. If we do Proliferate, actually don't care about the Proliferate very much, but when the Scamp dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. So sometimes after casting a pump spell on the Scamp and getting an attack in, we can simply sacrifice it so we can deal damage equal to its power to try and close out the game. Then a Kumano will eventually turn into a creature, but we also like the second chapter giving us a +1/+1 counter, so that can enhance our Cacophony Scam, for instance, and now it deals 2 damage when it dies at the very least. And then we've got a Monastery Swiftspear, finally get to play with the original art from Kinds of Tarkir, even in Standard, and this 1/2 with Haste and Prowess will also benefit from casting all these non-creature spells. And then at 2 mana, there's Picnic Ruiner, and we'll often cast this just as a 2 mana 2/2, but when it attacks while we control a creature with power 4 or greater, it gains Double Strike until end of turn, and Double Strike also pairs very nicely with any pump spells, as we get to double their effect basically. And then occasionally we can also use the Stolen Goodies Adventure, distributing 3 +1/+1 counters among any number of target creatures we control, so that can also potentially grow or Scamp or a Picnic Ruiner that's already in play. And then we've got 4 copies of Questing Druid, which is both a threat that will grow from casting all these cheap red spells, as well as a form of card advantage if we seek the beast at instant speed. Typically want to cast this adventure during the opponent's turn, so we get to untap and have a whole turn with all our mana to potentially cast those spells from exile, including playing a land for the turn. And then finally 2 copies of the Iconoclast as a 3/2 with Trample, and we can also kick it for red mana, in which case it enters with +1/+1 and haste until end of turn. So it just gives us an extra threat to try and close out the game in case our opponent's got a lot of removal for our other threats. And of course Trample is also a recurring theme here with Audacity, Monstrous Rage, Ancestral Anger, always to give Trample so the opponent can't easily chum block a large creature. And then our mana base has 4 copies of Copperline Gorge, which is very important for any aggressive deck, having an untapped dual land. And then Corplusen Forest is also untapped, but a bit more painful, and I'm even complementing it with 2 copies of Thran Portal, which can name either red or green when it enters, and later can also potentially enter the battlefield tapped, and will also cost us life if we want to tap it for mana. So this is just to make sure we have both colors early, and we don't need to deal with too many tap lands, which is why I only have 2 copies of Rockfall Veil, which is good mana fixing, but typically not something you want to draw too many copies of. And then we've got a few basics, 2 forests, mainly focusing on the red mana, which is most of our early spells, and then we've got the channel lands, which can offer a tiny bit more utility as well. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump in some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw. Our hand's missing a 1 mana creature, but I'll still keep it. We've got a Picnic Ruiner, which plays well with our other pump effects, facing what looks like blue-white control. Make that Esper. I think I like going Scamp and then put Audacity on it while the opponent's shields are down. And then next turn we can start pumping it with Anger and Monstrous Rage. Or we can just play Picnic Ruiner. But then it's going to be awkward to resolve Audacity in the face of instant speed removal. So I'll try this. You can also go for a Questing Druid. But we'll see. Opponent passes. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna play any more pump spells here. Can start by attacking and see what happens. Edict will take care of it. So we'll just take the card and the 3 damage. And then still kind of liking the questing druid end of turn, even if we're not putting another threat on the battlefield. Agree to dig. So this might be a Mind Splice Apparatus deck, if they're looking to proliferate. Alright, Swiss Spear was a good draw, so now we still get to make use of that Monstrous Rage. So play Questing Druid, Swiss Spear, and Rage. And then next turn we also have the option of maybe using the Adventure, Stolen Goodies, which is pretty fitting for the holidays. And yeah, that's enough for a concession, I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Our hand is not perfect with one land, but we can draw with Anger, try and hit a second land drop, and then we do have multiple pump spells to combine with Scamp and Picnic Ruiner, so I'll give it a shot. And then ideally we find a second land in time, and then it should be pretty easy to deploy the rest of our hand. Opponent on a multicolored domain deck, perhaps. Okay, so Thran Portal was a good draw, can name a red, play Picnic Ruiner, and then next turn we can potentially do some damage. Not expecting too much removal early. So it could be a good opportunity to sneak in a big attack. Plains, so Leyline Binding would still be pretty expensive. Opponent had a Laydown Arms instead. Alright, not commonly played, but pretty good here. So while the shields are down, we could Anger to try and draw into a land. And then still play another Scamp if we don't. Just so we can at least have one creature in play to attack with. Find a Swift Spear. I guess we'll still go with a Scamp here. Could also Audacity, but that'll be better to enable Prowess next turn. So I guess there's also an argument for Swift Spear, so next turn we can Audacity and Monstrous Rage. Sure. We'll have to do the math if we can present lethal next turn. Maybe if we draw another green source we can. But now we have to watch out for Leyline Binding at instant speed. It's going to be an Up the Beanstalk. Alright, so another Laydown Arms would be worst case. They don't have it. So yeah, what if we just Giant Growth and Monstrous Rage on the Scamp? Pretty sure that's lethal once we sacrifice it. And that's 10 damage, plus another 7 incoming. Nothing to proliferate, but 7 damage is all we need. Awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, and our hand's certainly a little bit sketchy with only one creature. If it gets removed, our hand doesn't do anything. If it can stick around, we can enhance it in a few different ways, and Anger draws another card. So, yeah, this one's borderline. Having a bunch of green spells with only one painful green source is also not ideal. But I think I'm still keeping. Facing a Spyglass Siren, so maybe a blue-white kind of mid-range deck. A third Audacity is not what we needed. But hopefully we don't face too much removal, at least. Opponent passes, Kumano we might want to deploy. And then there's a chance our opponent just has a Virtue of Loyalty token, which is not going to block very well once we enable Prowess. If they have a Get Lost instead, that would be more painful. So this name is green. Try Kumano. I think we have to try Audacity. That resolves. And hit for 5. Opponent did nothing end of turn. That's curious. Virtuoso, I see. So they're also trying to go all in on one creature. Well, we can attack, planning to both Monstrous Rage and Giant Growth. Could also try and hit another land drop with Ancestral Anger, and then still attack with Giant Growth available. And then any land here will still be somewhat useful. Another Giant Growth. Oh, let's attack. And gotta go for it. And 9 damage down to 2, so now a Darker Wastes can no longer easily tap for mana, or colored mana I should say. Alright, opponent's got a way to gain life, so that's gonna help offset the damage from the Pain Land. So opponent gains 8 here, back up to 9. And another Audacity to draw. Well, I think the play is Giant Growth and Monstrous Rage for the most damage. And then we'll be able to trample over the Siren if they go in front of Etching. And that should be 9 damage here coming across. Let's find out. I see opponent might be phasing out our creature. Okay, so still, if they don't block Etching, they die. But they will. So now we can put our opponent to 1 and make them unable to tap a Darker Waste for colored mana. And then, yeah, hopefully they can't take us out on the way back. Opponent can explore, get them up to 6 power potentially. No, our opponent found their 4th a Darker Waste. That's unlucky. So they can't cast any colored spells, and that's enough for a concession. Wow, what a strange game. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Our hand seems good enough to keep. A little bit low on the pump effects, but with double Questing Druids, we'll be able to see a few more cards. For now, I'm still liking Picnic Ruiner just to keep up the pressure. Opponent a black-green, potentially a mid-range deck. And a Dread Knight can be an annoying blocker. Okay, so we've got options. Now, of course, the Dread Knight's gonna be happy to block a double-striking Picnic Ruiner, especially if it doesn't trample. So I don't think that's the play this turn. So I could main phase the Adventure on Questing Druid, hoping to hit a land and a 1-drop. Or at the very least a land, so we can still maybe add a Scamp to the board. Given that we have another Questing Druid, I think that's reasonable. I don't want to fall behind on land drops if I can help it. And this is perfect, so now we can attack with both, and then still Giant Growth. Opponent's gonna take it. In that case, I'm just gonna let damage happen and play Scamp. Could have also main phased the Giant Growth just so Picnic Ruiner got double strike. Then they definitely would have chum blocked. And if we can wait, that's probably in our best interest. Sentinel, another large blocker. Alright, and there's our way of giving trample. So let's see here. We could pump the Scamp with Ancestral Anger and Giant Growth, and then attack with everyone. And then we'll see how our opponent blocks. Could also move in on the Picnic Ruiner with all our pump spells, and then let's see. Anger up to 3, double Giant Growth up to 9 with double strike. That's also pretty good. Might actually be better than moving in on the scamp. Find another questing druid. Suppose we could also pump the scamp and then attack with everyone. And then if they don't block scamp, we can also sacrifice it, which is similar to double strike. Either way, this is a lot of damage. Opponent double blocking Swiss Spear, so now they're definitely dead. Even before we have to sacrifice our scamp. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, and our hand seems decent. Start with a Kumano, so scamp picks up a counter. And then questing druid can find more lanes. And maybe more pump spells. Opponent also red-green, but with a Rot Priest. Don't often see Rot Priest in a red-green deck, so I'm kind of curious. Either way, can play double scamp now with Crucible. Ancestral Anger, so yep, opponent's also playing their pump spells. And there's our own Anger. So we could pump the scamp so we can attack all out and still have a Giant Growth as backup. Although we're also happy to just questing druid end of turn. If they take it, opponent takes it. I don't think we're gonna have to take out the Rot Priest here. Opponent might also have a protection spell in hand, so better not to play into those. Alright, they've got white mana as well, and Virtuoso makes sense. So they are trying to suit up one creature. I find Kumano Monstrous Rage, those are both good. Okay, so I can play all 1-drops this turn. I guess I could start by attacking first, and then we're likely gonna make use of both the Giant Growth and Monstrous Rage. But our opponent could also have their own trick here, so we'll see. Blocks the smallest scamp, so we could just move all in on the unblocked scamp with Monstrous Rage and Giant Growth. That would be +6 power, so that's lethal by itself. And then for 1 mana, what can they have? 2 damage burn spell, perhaps, and then we can still respond with the Giant Growth, or once Monstrous Rage resolves, we're in the clear. So I don't think we need to mess with the Virtuoso in case they have their own Giant Growth. Things could get messy. So we'll start here, that's known information. That works. And then, yeah, unless they've got a Witchstalker Frenzy, I guess we can let damage happen since we've got 7 plus another 5 is 12, and then Kumano's 13. If I Giant Growth and they have a Witchstalker Frenzy, I get punished. And then the scam can also deal 1 to the Virtuoso or go upstairs, I suppose. There's a small chance your opponent's got a Tamiyo's Safekeeping, which can gain them 2 life. So that's maybe still a reason to cast a Giant Growth here before Scam dies. So I guess we can see if they've got it. And just a Tyvar stand, so that one doesn't gain any life. Okay, so we could still Giant Growth if we wanted to, but it's not really necessary. So, yeah, taking full advantage of the opponent's double strike to decide how to sequence our pump spells. And then I'm not going to proliferate anything, but I will deal 8 upstairs. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, and our hand seems fine. I'll take a few more pump spells off the top, but for now we've got Swiss Spear, Picnic Ruiner, and then Questing Druid to refuel and find more action. Opponent blue-black, and they have the cut down. Okay, a lot of spot removal could make things tough. I think we still play the Picnic Ruiner. Questing Druid is going to be more effective if we have more lands in play, so we can cast every spell from exile before they go away. And now an Audacity is pretty nice. Just gotta hope they don't have another cut down, which I guess we can also respond to with a Giant Growth. So we should be in the clear. And then end of turn, go for the Adventure on Questing Druid. Could also just hit the opponent for 14 here if we Giant Growth, but let's keep the Giant Growth in hand for now. And then maximize our mana usage. And yeah, Picnic Ruiner plus Audacity, just too good for the Esper deck. They are out of answers, and the damage piles on very quickly as we get to rank up here. Awesome. Okay, we're on the play. Our hand is good but not great. The forest makes it a little more difficult to empty the rest of our hand. Can start with either Scamp or Swiss Spear, Anger to draw. Hope to pick up an extra land. Yeah, this one's somewhat borderline. I think I'll still keep it. Would be a bit of a disaster if we draw another green land that doesn't make red. But otherwise, most of our draws are decent. Our opponent on mono black. Yeah, we can attack and then play a Picnic Ruiner. Opponent accepts the trade. They most likely have removal for Picnic Ruiner, so I'm not going to want to Ancestral Anger, but we can play a Swift Spear and then end of turn Adventure the Questing Druid and try and find more action. If they go for an Edict now, I guess we could consider casting Ancestral Anger, but Questing Druid's still more mana efficient. And with another hasty Swift Spear in hand, we should be able to make use of any pump spells we find. So let's go with that approach. Liliana is pretty good, but another Swiss Spear can finish it off.
I'll have this fight finished before lunch.
Land and Scamp, I'll take those. So we're just gonna play a bunch of creatures. Now Kumano, also a clean answer to Liliana. So let's go with a Druid, Kumano and Scamp. So we maximize our +1 counters. And then next turn Swiss Spear will enter with a +1 counter as well.
Fine. I know when I'm not wanted.
Okay, so despite our opponent having some good interaction here, taking out 3 of our creatures, we're still doing pretty well. This is where Shieldred usually shows up. It's gonna be a cut down on the Scamp before we can protect it with the pump spell. And a Deep Cavern Bat. Okay, can take away maybe our Ancestral Anger. And find a Picnic Ruiner. So I would like to use the Adventure, but I don't want to go all in on a single Questing Druid and to run into another Liliana or Edict. So I think it's better to just play both creatures out. And then question is, do we want the +1 counter on Picnic Ruiner from Kumano here, or on Swiss Spear? I think Swiss Spear makes sense, we get to attack with it right away, and then Picnic Ruiner is already going to have double strike. The only consideration is attacking into potential Shieldred, which can still block a 2/2 double strike, but wouldn't be able to block a 3/3 double strike too well. But we're hitting for 7. Alright, at 5 mana we have to watch out for a Gix's Command, which could wipe our entire board right now. Which maybe was also reason to put the +1 counter on the Picnic Ruiner instead. Now Flesh Gorger. Alright, so what if we attack with everyone here? Let's say they block Swiss Spear. Then we still hit them for 11 and our opponent gains 3. They're more likely to block either Etching or, at this point, maybe Picnic Ruiner, since blocking Swiss Spear is pretty risky if we have any instant, but I guess most instants would win us the game. Could also just attack with Picnic Ruiner and Questing Druid, and then our opponent most likely takes the trade for Picnic Ruiner, so we might miss out on a bit of damage. Yeah, let's just go all out. Opponent does block the Etching. So there are 2. And Gix is next. Is our opponent still attacking here? They are. Okay. Do they draw us a question? They do. That's brave. And now a Swiss Spear off the top. Pretty sure that's lethal, even if they chump Questing Druid. We should have at least 4 going through. And our opponent explodes. Awesome. Alright, so a nice undefeated streak here with our red-green aggro deck, getting full advantage of the classic giant growth, both with our double-striking Picnic Ruiner and the Scamp being able to sacrifice after damage. So that's how you can get the most out of these pump spell effects. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.